Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Angel and today we're doing my end of year book tag. House more things before we jump in. I've never filmed here before in this cute little corner, but I thought it was like, okay, we'll try it. Let me know if you guys like it. It's like, well, I never film with my hair up, but I'm kind of hating it. As you guys can see, I do have this like big red pimple forming up for some reason. That's not going to go away for anything, so you should mind your business. This is the last day or the second last day of vlogmas, I think, so it's really exciting. We're gonna do more of just like a little tea chat. I have my tea here. We're just gonna sit here and chit chat about what I read this year. It's gonna be very chill, very low key. Grab your coffee or tea if you'd like, and we're just gonna settle right in. A little bit before we go in, these are all my opinions. You are entitled to your own, and yours are valid, and so are mine. If I'm about to like really bust down a book that you love, please be kind. If I love a book that you do not like, that's great. Reading is so subjective at the end of the day, and these are just what I thought about the books I read this year. I get all these questions from Larry, so go watch her video as well, but let's get into this. I hate when you see this like tuft of hair when I turn to the side. Make it stop. First of all, the biggest disappointment of the year, and this one's gonna ruffle some feathers, I fear, because this series has such a cult-like following. It's kind of scary. I choose just one for each category, maybe two if I have to, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say the most disappointing read of the year this year was probably Some Kind of Perfect by Kristen Becker Ritchie. Unpopular opinion, I found that series really repetitive. If you love the characters, you're gonna love that series. I did love all the characters, especially Rose and Connor, but I did not love them enough to read an 800-page epilogue novel where it was just the same thing over and over and over again. Entire book was like, oh, this couple's pregnant. Oh, here's one random scene. Here's some spice. The child was born. Let's repeat 12 times because there's over a dozen children. I read books in that series like as high as like 4.5 stars, I think. Like I think the last Rose and Connor book was a 4.5. That one was a 2.5. And that's probably like a stretch because like genuinely looking back on that book, like there's nothing I think back fondly of, which is bad. The biggest underdog of this year, I had a hard time choosing one because I wasn't sure if it was like a personal underdog for me. Like I didn't think I was gonna like it, or if it was like one that like the book community didn't really catch up on. I wasn't 100% sure. I'd say the book I read that I think was the biggest underdog this year was probably A Song to Drown Rivers. That was by a debut author. Even like going into it, I did not know the impact it was gonna have. I did not know how strong the message at the ending was going to come across to me. To me, like what I took away from it personally was a beautiful message about women in our society and how women can be used when it's convenient and then discarded afterwards, and it was just so incredibly heartbreaking. I thoroughly recommend, if you have not read the book yet, to pick it up. It was so beautifully done. A book I thought was overhyped this year that I read, this kind of goes for anything, but I think everybody's pretty much on the same page with this author, is The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. And now I understand that actually this book wasn't well received by a lot of the like fans of Frida. However, for me personally, The Housemaid in general, I think was really overhyped. Like I read that book and I was like, might be a 3-star. And then I read the next one, the one with the red cover, I don't know what it's called. And that one I felt like it was better, but it still was like not incredible. And just more so as an author, every single book I read by Frida, I'm like yeah, it's like quick and it's bingeable, but it's nothing of like, it's not amazing. And that's so like, I feel bad to say that. And the thing too is a lot of her books lately have been just making me feel very, very icky. Like I read The Teacher and I was like, I don't enjoy any part of this. Like I'm reading this, I'm like, this just makes me feel so uncomfortable. Like I get the whole point is to make you feel that way, but like the fact like people write that. The book that surprised me the most, I'm gonna go ahead and do two for this one, and they're gonna be two contemporary romances. And I think this is just because when I first got onto Book Talk, I got a really bad kind of like start with contemporary romance. I was like, oh, I'm a fantasy girly. Like that just must be the reason. And after there is actually amazing contemporary romances, I just wasn't reading them. That's what it was. I really love this year that I would say I was most surprised by was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood and The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. The Love Hypothesis because I didn't think I was gonna enjoy it as much as I did. Like I went in very like anti that book for some reason. Like I was like, I'm not going to enjoy it. Like it's not gonna be my cup of tea. And then I went and actually really loved it. I thought it was a fine little time. Like I'm not like obsessed, but it was great. And The Bodyguard was just so cute. I just loved Catherine Center's writing, and I think that's what it did for me. Favorite book couple, don't even have to have any competition for this one. It's Emma and Justin from Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Done. Justin is the blueprint. Go read it. Thanks. A little intermission because this is a spiced apple tea. I feel like it's good, but it's very like fall-esque. If anybody has any good like wintry tea recommendations, let me know. I do love a good like herbal tea is my jam. Not really black teas, to be honest. Green teas are a go most of the time, but like something besides like peppermint, you know, and like spearmint, something besides those. If you have any recommendations, let me know. Favorite main character, I had to make a list of these ones because I could not just pick just one. Obviously Emma from Just the Summer, because I just felt so seen in this character and she's resonated so much with me. So also had to make the list. Frankie from The Women by Kristen Hanna. I still think about her daily. I think it is just, she was just so strong and incredible. I think Vin from Mistborn, like her story arc and like just seeing her enjoy life a little bit while also getting emotionally damaged is such a beautiful thing to see. One that I definitely was not into in the first book but has grown on me on the second book, and I think I will come to love over the next, I think there's like 3 trilogies about this guy, is Fitz from the Farseer trilogy. I really am rooting for him, and I know there's 16 books in the universe, I'm pretty sure, but like 2 more whole trilogies just about him, if I'm not mistaken. A new author I discovered that I love has to be Brandon Sanderson. Has to be, naturally. 100% participating in the Sarah J Maas to Brandon Sanderson pipeline. It's happening for me. And I think that's what happened this year is I discovered just a love for, I started more with romance, and then discovered romantic. I was like, this is my thing. And now I'm getting more into high fantasy. I'm like, this is my thing, maybe. So I'm just discovering him. I've read Mistborn and Well of Ascension. I'm starting Hero of Aegis today. Kind of terrifying, not gonna lie. That man, I'm going to, anything he writes, I'll read. An author that didn't work for me, I honestly didn't really have one of these this year that like I just read, I was like, this isn't it for me. But ones I might just say that I think I'm writing off in the future, like future releases, I think would be Freida McFadden. Like I said, I had a couple books with her this year that I did not gel with at all, and that she made a really icky feeling I didn't enjoy. And then unpopular one, I don't think I want to say his name properly. It's like Alex Michaelides, how you say it. I read The Silent Patient, wasn't overwhelmed at all. And then I read The Maidens this year, and that one I was just like, it was good, but like it wasn't doing anything for me. Like I wasn't like, oh my gosh. So I'd probably be picking them up going forward, but who knows? Honestly, I read fast. I'm always kind of willing to just try something just to try it. I'm always doing 24-hour readathon, so we'll see. The happiest book I read. This is funny because I don't read happy books a whole lot. Like even my contemporary romances now, I find that the ones I love are the ones that make me cry, you know? But I would just say probably, I'm gonna say the happiest book I read, which probably is not accurate. But the book that I was like happiest to read would have to be Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. I just love me some Elsie Silver, and it was for the most part like a pretty good vibes book, I'd say. And it came out on my birthday. It's like I was so amped. The saddest book I read, I have 2. The first one is You Be Home by Kathleen Glasgow, and this one to me it was a story about addiction, but more so not even how it affects the person themselves, also like everybody else around them. And it was set from the POV of the younger sister, and it was just gut-wrenching. It was so sad that but it was like beautiful. Like I think it was like a 4.75 for me. I loved it. And then a sad book that I did not enjoy was If Only I Had Told Her. And this book to me is the definition of just trauma dumping, but like not good. And like just trying to make you cry. That was what this book was to me. Like it wasn't necessary, I don't think. And then the whole, I was excited for this book, not excited, but I was wanting to read this book because from what I knew, it was from the POV of Finn, the boy from If Only He Had Been With Me. I was like, okay, that'd be nice to get his POV. And then all of a sudden, his POV lasted the first 100 pages, and then we got 2 other POVs in it. And I was like, this isn't what I wanted. It's not what I signed up for. And it was just she threw it, you can tell that I don't think there was not supposed to be a second book. You can tell. And then it just was it was just supposed to make you sad and cry, but it wasn't well done in my opinion at all. I think it won a 2 or 2.5. Most frustrating book, I would have to say, don't want to say it again, probably Some Kind of Perfect from the Addicted series, just because I was just so over that book by the 250 page mark, and I trekked through 550 more pages of it. And then what I'd say was actually more 75% my fault, 25% the book's fault, was The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This was my first book I read in the realm of the Elderlings, and I, at the time, I still give it a 3.5. I enjoyed it, but it was the trek to get there. It took me over a month to read it because I just was not used to the language at all. I also was not in the mood for it, and I forced myself to read it because it was on my TBR, and I was like, oh, I gotta read it. I forced myself to read it, and quite literally, I had to reread paragraphs over and over and over again because I wasn't used to the language in it. It was my first high fantasy I tried reading, which was probably my mistake, honestly. It was like reading a foreign language, and I just couldn't comprehend it. And then I finished it a month after starting it. And normally, if you guys know me, it takes me I read books at 100 to 120 pages an hour. Typically, more so 120 pages an hour. So I read books in a day frequently. And it's a 400-page book. I probably read this in 2-3 days max. It took me a month. And then I was in a 2-month book slump, so. I'm gonna be really extra for best book adaptation, and I'm gonna do one that I haven't even read yet, because truthfully I can't think of any really good book adaptations that I've read that came out this year. So I'm gonna go ahead and say Wicked, because I watched that and like nothing's gonna top that. Favorite covers is definitely the new covers of An Ember in the Ashes, which I think is like, I don't own any special editions, so I don't have any like really pretty books, but those ones, I actually want to read that series now for the past 2-3 years, and I have been avoiding it like the plague because I did not like the old covers. Wasn't my vibe, but then they have these beautiful like bright now colored ones that are so gorgeous, and I was like, and now I'm reading them and I love them. So the 2 books I can't stop thinking about are actually my top 2 reads of the year, so that would have to be Yellowface by R.F. Kuang and Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Yellowface dealt with morality and ethics in like such a way, such a unique way, and such like an in-your-face way. And it was, I know it wasn't, but when I read it, it was almost like in a way where it was like do you see how stupid you sound? Like it was one of those things where it was like the way that our main character was trying to rationalize things that she was doing are things we see a lot daily, I think, and things people like try to rationalize themselves. And so it's more so like, so you can read her doing it and you can understand this is wild, and people still do this daily. And it was so good. Just with more Abby Jimenez, I could talk about for hours, but the main thing about this book, and I think just like Abby's writing in general, it's like more contemporary romances that are coming out, like Emily Henry, it's, without being emotional, it is like, I feel like healing parts of me, because we're dealing now with characters who do have trauma and are dealing with like such complex things going on in their life that I feel like before, like romance novels were always like, oh, you know, this perfect person is this perfect person and off we go. And now like it's starting to more branch out to just because you're flawed does not mean you don't deserve love. And just because you've experienced things that hinder your ability to love does not mean you don't deserve it. And it is just something that I am loving when I'm reading, and it is like, it is healing parts of me. Unpopular book I loved, I'm gonna go on a limb here and pick 2. The one was one that I think I loved it because it mattered so much to me at the moment, and that was The Collective Regrets of Clover. This book is about a death doula, and it talks about grief so openly and beautifully, and I read this weeks after my great-grandmother passed. I just think when I read it, it was like the perfect time, and I finished it, and it was just like, it was good for my soul in the moment. I do think I'm gonna do a reread of it because her 1-year passing is coming up. I think I'm gonna do a reread of it this month or beginning of next year. But it was so good. This might be cheating too, but for that same one, I'm gonna go Night Road by Kristen Hanna, because I think Kristen Hanna is getting the love she deserves this year. I started reading her books 2023, I believe, and I was obsessed, and I'm kind of just working through her entire backlist. And Night Road is one that I find is not as talked about right now, based on her historical fictions, and I feel like Firefly Lane really had its chance this year, and I want to hear about Night Road, because Night Road was so good. That was like a 4.5 or 4.75 for me. Pretty much in this one, she is dating her best friend's brother. They go out to a party one night, and he's supposed to drive, but he ends up drinking, and she is the least drunk of them all, so she decides to drive home. Ends up getting in a massive car wreck, and her best friend does not make it. And that's kind of just going through that. And I'm just gonna leave it there, but like it becomes a beautiful story. It builds from there, but yeah. Book I thought I'd love, but I didn't. This one was hard because I don't really think I had any that perfectly matched the description this year. Like there wasn't a single book I was so amped, so excited for, and that I read and I just like did not like. That didn't really happen. However, one that I would say, I'm gonna put this one down, but I hate putting this down because it's still like a 3.75 for me. I still really enjoyed it. But I'm gonna say The Wolf Den. And this is only because I in my head had the wrong information about what this book was going into it. So the thing was, when I picked this book up, I had this like made up concept of what it was in my head that I forget if I'd heard like pieces of this and like got it wrong or what it was, but for some reason I was convinced this book was one thing and it was not that. So I went into this book being like, this is like everything I love in a book, like, oh my goodness, and I was so excited going in, and then it still was amazing, but it wasn't that. And then I was kind of like, oh, that was my own fault. It wasn't the book's fault. So I'm gonna say that one as kind of a little easy cop out, but most unique concept, I feel like always has to go to a like dystopian or fantasy or sci-fi. I'm gonna have to go with Scythe for this one. It's a YA trilogy, but there's like another book with it technically. And this one they have mastered death. And pretty much now you don't die of any natural consequences. It's just these people called Scythes who can glean people. And they do that by like researching who should die. Like one of the ones that stuck with me was there was like an 18-year-old boy, or there was a boy who was like young. I think he was like 16 to 18. And they're like, oh, well, he has a fast sports car. He drives kind of recklessly. Maybe like he drinks, the other thing. They're like, so he would have died. So back in the day, he'd been more likely to pass away than one of his like peers. So they gleaned him. One that was really messed up that stuck with me was the one time they kind of like a corrupt Scythe just like walked onto a plane and was like, hey, back in the day, you had a whatever % chance of dying in a plane crash. You're the one that's going down today. So you're all gonna be gleaned today. And things you have to accept it, because if you run away, I think it's like you they now glean you and your entire family, I think is what it was. Definitely really trippy to read about. Very interesting though. Book I want to reread, I'm going to go ahead and say Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, because I read that one digitally and didn't have my own physical copy. And I want to go back and just highlight the heck out of that book and annotate it. And the other one would be When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. And because this one I feel like I gave the Mistborn treatment, that's what I'm going to call it now. Where Mistborn, when I first read it back in August, I tried reading it in a day. I was like, I wasn't fully invested. Like my mind was elsewhere. I wasn't paying full attention. And I gave it like a 4. And I was like, it was good. And then I reread it with my full attention. It took a couple days, took my time with it. And it was like a 4.75. And it only wasn't a 5-star because I was like, I can't give every book this man writes a 5-star. I probably can. But I was like, I don't think the first book I ever read by him should be a 5-star. That's like crazy. But so same thing happened. I read that book for reading a book in a day challenge. And I felt like if I just take my time with it a bit more, I could have enjoyed it a bit more. So I'm gonna give it a second chance next year. Even though it was already like a 4 or 4.25 this year. A book I wish I got the time to read this year, that would have to be The Entire Stormlight Archives. I want to read Brandon Sanderson at the beginning of the year. I kept putting it off because I was a chicken and I was scared. And then I kept seeing all the hype for Wind and Truth and I was like, oh my gosh, like I wish I could have read it when it came out. Because remember how much fun it was to read House of Flame and Shadow when it came out, and like Sabrity's reactions on it, what they were saying. And I wish I just got it together and started the series earlier so I could have read Wind and Truth with everybody. But his next release, I will be on time for, okay? I'm putting into existence right now. Unless he like pops out a random one in February as a surprise. He does that too. Also is my priority reads for next year, and this is very easy for me. The big 2 are Sanderson, The Cosmere, and Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings. Those are like my top 2 main priorities. I think they're both like 15 to 16 book series, like in total, like all the cumulative little mini series books together. Cosmere, I've read 2, working on the 3rd, and Realm of the Elderlings, I've read 2. So reading those is like my big goal for next year. And then just like my 25 to read in 2025, that list I made, that's gonna be a big goal. And then lastly, just my reread of the Massverse. So I wanted to start that this year and have it almost done. And then I've only read A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Furies on my TBR for December. But I haven't read any other ones. So mostly 2 big new series, 1 big reread, and my list of 25 to read 2025. Our friends, without further ado, that is my end of year book tag. I always feel weird filming this like a little bit before the end of the year because I'm like, what if I read a book that just like changes everything? Because like, for example, I'm about to start reading Hero of Ages and I feel like that could be like a huge upset in some of this list, but we're just doing it now. Like I said, this is the second last or last day of Vlogmas. So hope you guys have had so much fun so far. I've had a lot of fun just like planning and getting these videos out. I'm about to take a bit of a break after this. I probably won't post next week. Just like myself some time to reset. If you guys like today's video, please like, comment, subscribe. I'm also on TikTok, Angel's Book Corner, and I'll see you guys next video. Bye.